I can't do singles. Not people. It's just fine if you haven't or aren't trying to find a partner. But music? I'm an albums guy. If you want me to listen to a song more than once, it needs to either be on an album/EP or be Bubblin' by Anderson .Paak. When I go to listen to music, I put on an album. And occasionally, an album really sticks for me. Like Clippings, Visions of Bodies Being Burned, Porter Robinson's Smile, A Face in Your Life by Pet Fox, or Few Good Things by Saba. Honestly, lots of others as well. And whether it becomes my fling for a few months, or my album of the year, or added to the list of records which I buy physically because I love them so much, these are the most important pieces of music to me. With that being said, let's talk about Never Enough by Turnstile, and how I think it might actually be a new genre. Music is not analyzed in the same way as other artistic mediums today. Other than maybe these few popular voices, music conversation these days is normally critique rather than analysis. Now, I'm not known for it by any means, but before a YouTuber or a streamer, I'm a musician. I play in an alt-rock band, and I've done hip-hop on my own for a while. And so, while most of this channel's other videos have been about anime or video games or other YouTube creators that I love, there are many songs, albums, and artists that I love just as much, if not more. And honestly, I'm probably a little more qualified to talk about music than any of the other things that I have. So today we're going to talk about some music as maybe a little change of pace. A little background before we dive into the album itself. Hardcore punk and its many offshoots and children are what made me the mess of a human being that you see today. With my dad introducing me to some extreme metal and skate punk acts when I was a kid, it makes sense that I eventually found my way into the scene a little bit. And while most music YouTubers who talk about the blog era do so in reference to hip-hop, which I will almost certainly do in the future as well at some point, this was also a really awesome time in the punk, hardcore, metal scenes as well. I found a lot of my all-time favorite bands through blogs that I found in high school. God, I am almost 30. But bands like Deaf Heaven or Grown Ups, Title Fight, Piano Become the Teeth, Animals as Leaders, even, I found through blogs I was reading before music streaming was really a thing. And one of the bands that I discovered during this time was Turnstile. Something important to know, the Turnstile of 15-ish years ago is very different from the one that you have hopefully heard today. They were a hard-hitting but pretty safe-sounding hardcore band. Not to say that hardcore is necessarily a safe-sounding genre, but what I'm saying is they fit into it. They weren't pushing any crazy boundaries. Now, as time went on, their sound definitely evolved, as it does with most bands, but during this era, I wasn't really listening to them very much, as I kinda just saw it as another one of the bands that I had previously loved that decided to make music that was too soft, making the transition to shoegazy butt rock, as many of my favorite bands like 100th, Pianos Become the Teeth, or even The Devil Wears Prada had kind of done. I think looking back, I really did not give enough of that stuff a chance. Hardcore and its subgenres are ultimately kind of defined by aggression. If you don't have that aggression anymore, it makes sense for the band to stop making hardcore. But, despite the sound shift, I think Turnstile still kind of has the aggression. In 2021, Turnstile released their album Glow On, and I started hearing people talk about it. As someone who hadn't really listened to Turnstile for probably 8 years at that point, I decided to give it a chance. And, oh man, that record rules. Now I could maybe do a whole video about that record as well, but this video is actually about the follow-up. Very much a sequel in many ways. Glow On is kind of the perfect fusion of hardcore and like some post-rock elements, but it doesn't feel right to call it post-hardcore or melodic hardcore, even though that's almost certainly what it should be classified as. The aggression is there, even in the poppy moments on the album. And then Never Enough ramps up the pop appeal even further. And some people may say it's not hardcore anymore, and they might be right. At the end of the day, I'm not the subgenre police, but, well, We'll get into that a little bit later. Anyway, this record is sticky. I can't get it off my damn speakers. I heard one of the singles for it while driving with my wife, and she had turned on the Apple Music curated alternative playlist. It was playing and I was pretty much immediately like, oh, I like this a lot more than most of the songs that have played so far. Wait a second, is this Turnstile? And it was. So I listened to the rest of the singles once and watched a couple of the music videos and saw them playing on fucking Jimmy Fallon, and I had a feeling that this record was going to be kind of special. And I think I was right. If Glow On was the revitalization that hardcore or melodic hardcore needed in the 2020s with its perfect blend of catchy hooks, super aggressive punchy riffs, all drowning in a nice layer of guitar modulation, then Never Enough is maybe the polish to bring that sound to the mainstream. In fact, I've heard multiple people echo my opinion that Never Enough is hardcore if The Police made it. The band, not the government-sanctioned gang. Granted, there are some differences in why we say that, and I'll get into that a little bit later as well. Let's actually look at Never Enough through an analytical lens, identifying themes and symbolism and how it's achieved. Off rip, I feel that Never Enough's two most recognizable themes are juxtaposition and dissatisfaction. Let's talk about juxtaposition first, as I think it's the part of the album that is more noticeable, but maybe a little less substantial. Throughout the record, the band makes an active effort to keep you on your toes with the changing sounds. They will go from a Police-like melodic approach to punk that is absolutely drowning in guitar modulation, and then they will just beat you over the head with more straightforward, hardcore-style riffs, progressions, and vocal delivery. And yes, they'll swap between these styles on different songs, but sometimes they do it in the middle of a song as well. That title track, Never Enough, has kind of a fascinating structure that serves as a thesis statement for the rest of the record. We get the same lyrics and melody delivered to us twice, but the backing changes completely. It's the same idea, recontextualized by a different sound. We start with the big synths and spacey pads. You know, the same vibe as that modulated clean guitar. But then, drop some fucking EVH 5150 distortion on me, dad. And similar strategies are used kind of all over the record, although the exact formula differs a little bit. Maybe rather than just giving us the whole song two ways, we get a really super catchy, posty, spacey verse, and then a heavy chorus, such as on the almost certainly breakout single, I Care. Speaking of I Care, if you tell me that it's your favorite song on the record, it seems like maybe the obvious choice, but it's perfectly fair. The song just manages to blend the two sounds so well. And then it gives us more of that same juxtaposition in the lyrical content. The verses of the song see Brendan Yates telling someone, perhaps a friend, perhaps a significant other, perhaps the audience, that he is happy to destroy himself and ignore his needs for their sake. I'm happy to give myself away. I'm happy to fix what I can't say. Then asks in the chorus if that is what they actually want. But do you really want to fall apart? And do you really want to break my heart? Wow, sometimes a cute, happy song hurts a little more if you listen to the lyrics. No one's ever done that before. I think this little thread of juxtaposition is best exemplified on my favorite track of the record, Sunshower. A note, sun is actually my favorite word in the English language, aside from bitch. It's not something that I actively chose, unlike bitch, but I realized I kind of naturally gravitate towards anything with sun in the name. Sunshower, sunbather, sun-kissed, and it's why I named the organization for all the back end of my creative work, Sunpunks. Anyway, Sunshower. In addition to starting as the clearly most aggressive and up-tempo song on the record, it also has my favorite lyrical content, and probably the most polarizing switch-up on the record. The starting chords and tempo hit you off rip, and Brendan's vocal delivery is a little more traditional hardcore on this track than any of the others. The song is, in part, about struggling for a really long time before succeeding. Likely a commentary on the band's long history before achieving any sort of commercial success or general appeal. They worked for over 10 years before Glow On brought them into a spot that we would consider successful for a band. Then we learn in Sunshower that despite all of this, they're numb to it all. They're standing in the sun, but it's still raining on them. Sunshower. Definitely better than the other title they were considering for this song, The Devil is Beating His Wife. That's just a stupid joke for all my people in the American South. Now, while we hear both the themes of juxtaposition and dissatisfaction in the lyricism on this song, it doesn't last long. In fact, after only around 2 minutes, the song pivots into a Porter Robinson-sounding interlude. It's almost certain that someone in the band had been listening to a lot of Nurture, which also fits with a lot of the imagery presented in the song. Contrasted to the brief, intense moment in the first section of the song, there is beauty and peace here, a valuable moment of calm after the storm. The juxtaposition in lyricism and musicality definitely continues on to the rest of the record. Why would I go over every song here when you can go listen to the record yourself? Hopefully I can at least steer you a little bit, though, in what to look for. I might actually argue that the songs themselves are pretty simple, but that doesn't make them not worth analysis. Before I talk about the themes of dissatisfaction on the record, I've been hinting at it the entire video. I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. Let's talk about genre and the Police comparisons. I said before that I feel like Turnstile is doing to hardcore what the Police did to punk. That is a sentence that needs so much context. The Police were and are generally associated with the New Wave movement, which saw bands incorporating broader musical inspirations into what had generally been considered punk music, while also distancing themselves from the antics of bands like the Sex Pistols. So while you'll often hear the Police talked about as New Wave, their roots are in punk. With that said, I think most people are comparing the Police and Turnstile due to two things. One, the heavy use of guitar modulation, which Andy Summers of the Police is well known for, and the fact that the general vocal timbre of Brendan Yates is vaguely similar to that of Sting. Now, despite agreeing with those two ideas, I actually compare the bands for a very different reason. In many ways, the Police are the new wave sound to me. Maybe a few of you as well. Their jazz and pop influences are felt all over their punk music. For me, I hear pop and Latin influences all over Turnstile. With that, I feel like we are at the precipice of needing a new genre or movement name for what bands like Turnstile are doing. It's hardcore, but it's also something new. I've seen the term pop hardcore here and there thrown around by people trying to describe the sound, but that rolls off the tongue like partially chewed saltwater taffy. Hell, shorten it to popcore. I still hate that, but it's better. But you know what? I'm gonna throw out my take for what I think this new genre could be called. A term that I actually do like. Modcore. It sounds good, rolls off the tongue, and, like the mod movement of the 60s, stands in contrast to the trad of now more legacy hardcore acts. Sorry, Gen X, hardcore is at least well into its 40s by now. It's no longer breaking edge. I'm not saying that Turnstile is better, mind you. Just different. And deserving of a new title. Before jumping back into analyzing the record, I want to bring up one more thing before the comments crucify me. I don't think that Turnstile as a band have the same degree of musicality on display as a band like the Police. They would probably agree. But Turnstile's approach to music isn't Guitar Hero wankery and insane musical acrobatics. They choose instead to serve the song and the sound of modcore. It's gonna stick, I promise. Okay. Back to that second theme, dissatisfaction. Despite the fact that it's the word that I've been using throughout this video, that term is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Dissatisfaction is simply what I feel is the best catch-all term for the emotions on display. Whether it's the frustration of inadequacy as presented on the title track, or the inability to enjoy what you've achieved on Sunshower, or even just the general exasperation of soul. feel like all of these come from the same place of dissatisfaction. A feeling that things are not as they ought to be. In fact, Dreaming, personally the track I find least compelling on the album, speaks to things falling out of place, being not as they ought, even in fantasy. A sort of, I can't even imagine things being correct kind of vibe. Additionally, Ceiling is a quick little diatribe about things not going your way. This Is Happening is about watching things change around you and not being able to keep up. This unease pervades the record. Even songs that don't directly talk about it seem to be filled with that same angst. Despite how upbeat many of the songs seem on initial listen, closer inspection reveals that there are really only a couple positive songs on the entire record, contrasted to Glow On, which is generally more aggressive, but also far more positive as well. Clearly, there were a lot of frustrations that were channeled into this record, and probably because all of that, it feels incredibly cathartic. The final song, Magic Man, which consists of nothing more than Brendan Yates singing and a synthesizer, strange for a hardcore record, perfect for a modcore record, rather than being about coming to a sense of contentment or satisfaction, is about learning to live with dissatisfaction and frustration. It's not about changing the situation, but accepting it. The dissatisfaction is not gone, but it is what drives us forward to the next thing. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've received from the entire record is that occasionally there's some good in the unease.